Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. You are now listening to The Right Side. I am your host, Jeff Doggett, coming to you on the greatest station in the nation, from the greatest location in the nation. Shout out to all of you listening to us as far north as Kennebunkport, Maine, as far south as Key West, Florida, as far east as Long Island, New York, and as far west as Long Beach, California, and to all of you that are listening in all points in between. For those of you that are listening to us around the world, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever greeting best suits the time zone you are in. Happy Valentine's Day weekend. Listen, guys, listen. You better get those flowers or candy or get those dinner reservations or buy the lingerie, whatever it is, or because if you forget, it's going to be a cold night for you. So please, take my advice. If you haven't done so already, treat your baby right. Get her what she wants for Valentine's Day. Show her your love. There are several things that you can do to stop the spread of respiratory diseases such as COVID-19. Number one, wash your hands with warm soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If you don't know what 20 seconds are, just sing happy birthday, the first verse. Not that there are other verses, but just sing it once and you have completed 20 seconds. Number two, cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze. Yes, I know. You say, Jeff, that's common sense, but I've observed, and I'm sure you have too, that the least common thing that we see in the world today is common sense, right? So please cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze. Number three, wipe down frequently touched objects and items with some type of disinfectant. Number four, stay at home when you are sick and stay away from people who are sick. That job will go on without you. Trust me, it will. So stay at home when you're sick. And also too, please put in your car or truck or whatever type of vehicle you drive, mix in some hand sanitizer so that when you go to the gas station to pump your gas, after you use the pump, you can sanitize your hands because after all, you do not know who touched that pump prior to you handling it. And this was brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station, No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise, powered by Google and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines. If you are in the Cleveland area, on the first or third Saturday of the month, I have some really good news for you. You see, at 6812 Woodland Avenue, right here in Cleveland, Ohio, they are giving away a free bag of groceries. That's right, free in that you don't pay, free in that zero cost to you. And listen, here's the good news about it. You don't have to show proof of residence. So if you're from outside of the Cleveland area, you don't have to show that you live within this area. No one's going to ask you to show an ID. You don't have to show proof of income either. The only thing you have to show is up, and that you show up and you get the free bag of groceries, no questions asked. But not only do you get that, but you also get free clothing for you as an adult and also for children as well. So you get a free bag of groceries, you get free clothing for you and children. But listen, it doesn't stop there either, folks. No. Because from the hours of 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., guess what else they're doing? They are giving away a free hot lunch. And it's a home-cooked meal, too, folks. It's not some warmed over, thrown together, slopped together. No. This is a warm, home-cooked, hot meal that will leave your tummy feeling mighty yummy, okay? So, you ask, when is this? It's the first and third Saturday of each month. Where is it? 6812 Woodland Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. What time, you ask? From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we want to shout out Major Care Ministries, Major Care Ministries, the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, and also Williams Temple Church of God in Christ, which houses this event the first and third Saturday of each month. So shout out to all of them. Please take advantage of that whenever you can. Now, if you are new to this program, this is how we do it. We talk politics, we talk sports, we talk the issues of the day. I throw some topics out on the table. I give my take on said topics, and then we invite you to call in at 216-939-5087. That's right, 216-939-5087 to give your take on those topics. Or if there's something that I didn't put out on the table, but you just have on your mind that's just so heavy on your mind or so heavy on your heart that you want to talk about it, feel free to call in and talk about that as well at 216-939-5087. We only ask that you be clear and concise, that you not ramble on, but you stick to your point. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. That's what makes good back and forth talk show material. Now, listen. Are you all listening? Yeah, you are, because I can hear you out there and I can see you listening. This is not a monologue, folks. I know that you have things to say about the things that we talk about every week on this show. So I'm inviting you to call in. I'm not going to bite you. I'm not going to smack your knuckles with the ruler or anything like that. In fact, I invite your calls. I want you to call in because I'd like to have the dialogue with you right here at 216-939-5087. I know how you feel. I've been a listener to talk radio myself for such a long time. And I know how you feel, but listen, not only am I a listener to talk radio, but I participate in it as well. And so we would like for you to participate in it as well at 216-939-5087. Let me hear your takes on what we're going to talk about today. So you're listening, you say, okay, Jeff, we've heard all this, get to it. What are you talking about today? Well, here's what we have on the table today. We are going to talk about President Biden's State of the Union address this past Tuesday night. We're going to give a review of that and what we thought about it. We're not going to talk about the whole thing. There's just a couple key areas that I want to focus on that we're going to look at. We're also going to look at the state of Florida, and in this case, primarily Duval County, which, oh, by the way, is where Jacksonville is one of, if not the largest county in America. They are banning books. That's right. Where did you hear that before? Oh, in Nazi Germany and fascist Italy and communist China and Russia. Well, guess what? Banning of books has now come to the good old USA, the home of the free and the land of the brave. Well, wait a minute. I thought we had something called the Constitution, and I thought that the First Amendment of the Constitution gave you the right to free speech and freedom of the press. Well, not in the fascist state of Florida. So we're going to be talking about the banning of these books and really the agenda behind it, especially during Black History, not Black Mystery, but Black History Month, that to tie in with that as well. We're also going to look at a preview of the 2024 presidential election. Our sports topics today were the NBA trade deadline came and went this past Thursday, so we're going to look at who we feel are the winners and the losers after the trade deadline, and then we're going to give our Super Bowl prediction as Super Bowl 57 kicks off tomorrow evening in Scottsdale, Arizona at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, unless you've been under a rock for the last 2 weeks or so, you know that the Super Bowl is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. We have thoughts on that game as well. And then as we do most weeks, and not all the time, but this week we'll cap off our show with our hero and our zero of the week. So there you have it. There are our topics. Have at it. 216-939-5087. The other night, President Joe Biden gave his second State of the Union address of his term. And in his State of the Union address, he laid out his accomplishments, of which the all-time, since the lowest unemployment rate since 1969, the accomplishments of the Build Back Better Act, which the monies that have been spent to improve the infrastructure here in this country, as he pointed out, the bridge that was repaired between the Cincinnati and northern Kentucky on the Ohio River, talked about the new plant that's going to open up in Columbus that's part of the CHIPS Act. That was a bipartisan bill that passed the Senate. He talked about the need for police reform in the country and so on. But I want to focus on one particular area here. And what I want to talk about in regards to the President's State of the Union address is this. First of all, is the lack of decorum that was exhibited by the Republicans, primarily the far-right MAGA Republicans, during President Biden's speech. If you remember, if you watched, and if you didn't watch, you probably saw the news clips. And if you didn't watch or didn't see the news clips, let me just clue you in on what occurred. President Biden, in his speech, was talking about Social Security and Medicare. And he happened to mention the truthful fact. Wanted you to make sure that you hear this. The truthful fact that there are some within the Republican Party, he didn't name names, I will. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Senator Rick Scott of Florida, just to name two, that have talked about wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Now, when he mentioned it in the speech, President Biden didn't mention names. He just said some of my Republican friends, because they want to, and I'm paraphrasing here, want to get at him economically. And he said, I can understand that because there is the opposition there. Want to do it by cutting Social Security and Medicaid. And before he could finish the sentence, you would have thought that it was the Jerry Springer show that just broke out. You would have thought that you were at WWE or maybe at an athletic event, of a professional athletic event, because then all the booing and the hooting started from mainly the MAGA types. And I want to single out, well, before I single this person out, folks, this is so contrary to the decorum of how our elected officials are supposed to comport themselves during the State of the Union address. For example, in the past, before we had this most recent craziness spurred and birthed by former President Donald Trump, who threw all decorum to the wind. You know that. I don't have to go through all of his foibles. Threw all of that to the wind in his presidency. But before that, what would occur at the President's State of the Union address is this. The President, whoever he is, can't say she because unfortunately we haven't had any female presidents yet, but I digress. What he would do, be he a Republican or a Democrat, he would give his view of the state, the current condition of the State of the Union at that time. He would also outline plans that he has for the country going forward. And what would happen would be that the people of his party would applaud, sometimes give standing ovations and applaud, and then the people from the opposing party would either not do anything at all, kind of sit there kind of stone-faced and silent, or they would give the golf clap. You know, the golf clap was like that. And that was the norm. That was what was expected during the State of the Union address. And then, of course, the opposing party would then be allowed to give a rebuttal, if you will, to the President's State of the Union address, stating what they felt should be the direction of the party, the country rather, should go in, and that what their party's vision for the country is and what their platform is. That's how it was supposed to go. What we saw the other night, though, was contrary to that. So President Biden truthfully said that there were elements. He didn't say all of the Republicans, and that was, matter of fact, those were his remarks. He said not all, but some of my Republican friends, which he spoke truthfully of, want to cut Social Security. And as soon as he said that, that's when the Jerry Springer show broke out. As soon as he said that, that's when WWE Raw broke out, if you will. And the booing and the hissing and the chanting started from the MAGA types. And I want to single out one person in particular, my girl, my favorite whipping girl, if you will, because she brings it all on herself. And that is Congresswoman from Northwest Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, or if you're a regular listener to this show, you know I've dubbed her QAnon, the QAnon Queen, QAnon Margie, because she's a conspiracy theorist to the utmost. And she espoused quite a few of the conspiracy theories of the QAnon crowd until she, at least publicly, backed away from some of those recently. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, folks, when President Biden made the statement, was shown on camera to be shouting out the word liar. And that's really rich. That's really rich that of all people, QAnon Margie would be the one that was shouting out liar. Okay, for what reason, Jeff, you ask? Why is that rich? Why is that just hello kettle, hello pot, this is kettle? Why is that? Well, first of all, Marjorie Taylor Greene, speaking of lies, was and still is a supporter of the big lie. You know the big lie? You know, the one that former President Trump is still holding on to here almost 3 years after the election, that the 2020 election was stolen, that Joe Biden is not the president of the United States, that he really won the election. You know, the big lie that started the whole ridiculous Stop the Steal movement. You know, the big lie that started the whole we want to recount and that they're stealing our democracy away from her. You know, from us, rather. You know, the big lie that resulted in the insurrection of January 6th. That big lie, the big lie that every Republican candidate that ran on that big lie, for the most part, this past November midterm election was defeated and thoroughly defeated. That big lie, yeah. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a supporter of the big lie, and yet she has the nerve, with her white fur pimp coat on that she had on at the State of the Union address the other day. She came there dressed like she was Iceberg Slim or Goldie from the movie The Mac. Google it. I know that's for some of you all's time. But she had the nerve to shout liar. And she is a supporter of the most notorious liar that ever sat at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and that's Pinocchio himself, and that's former President Donald Trump. That's one thing. The other thing, too, that Congresswoman Taylor Greene shouted, that just shows the hypocrisy of her shouting out lie, is that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a 9/11 truther. Now, what is a 9/11 truther? 9/11 truthers are people who believe that the September 11th attacks that so devastated this country back in 2001 were all a government orchestrated and government planned event. And they also do not believe that the Pentagon was attacked that day. Okay, now listen. I really shouldn't even waste airtime talking about this, but you know, this is why we call it the right side, because we got to expose the darkness with light, all right? The one thing about darkness and light can't sleep together, because the light pulls covers. And I'm doing this to uncover the darkness. I saw, and you saw, to our horror, American Flight 77 crashing into the Pentagon on that fateful day some 22 years ago. I saw it. I don't have to, depend on a news report or some type of government release. I saw it with my own very two eyes. But you know what is so horrific and just so heinous about this claim that these truthers, of which Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of, hold on to, that the Flight 77 did not crash into the Pentagon, is what about the families of the victims of people that were on that flight? You know, the families of the middle school children from the inner city school in D.C. who had won a science fair and were going to be honored out in San Diego, California, and they, along with their escort teachers, were on that flight. What about those families? What about the families of the Pentagon official whose wife was on the plane, who called her husband and told her husband that the plane had been hijacked? And you're going to scream out at a State of the Union address when you're supposed to be exhibiting decorum, where you're supposed to be exhibiting self-control, where you're supposed to be exhibiting discipline, where you're supposed to be an example to the young people in this? How are we going to tell our children how to carry themselves when they see these clowns, this clown show on television at a State of the Union address, and they're acting like they're on the Jerry Springer show? And you have the unmitigated gall, the audacity to yell out liar, and you're a 9/11 truther. But it gets better than that, folks. Because this is the same Marjorie Taylor Greene that supported Alex Jones. You know Alex Jones, the Sandy Hook denier who spread the lies that the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut didn't take place? That guy who was convicted of this lie and has to pay an astronomical lawsuit to the families of those victims who perpetuated this lie for so long and had idiot followers believing this, that it was a red flag event that was staged so that the government could take your guns away from you. I wish I was making this up, folks, but I'm not. Whose lies were so heinous and went to such an extreme that people actually went and urinated on the grave of one of the 6-year-old children that was killed that day. Marjorie Taylor Greene was a supporter of Alex Jones because conspiracy theorists, birds of a feather, flock together. And yet she had the audacity to yell out lie at the State of the Union address with all of this baggage. And I didn't even unpack all of the baggage. You know, it's the same Marjorie Taylor Greene who said that the California wildfires a few years ago were caused by, quote, Jewish space lasers from outer space. Yeah, that was her. That was her. She's the same Marjorie Taylor Greene, by the way, who said that the shooting at Mary Stoneman Douglas High School. I was right the first. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Too many Marys and too many Marjories. I'm sorry. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. That the 5-year anniversary of that, as a matter of fact, is coming up this Tuesday, ironically and sadly, on Valentine's Day. She is the one who harassed David Hall, who was going to Capitol Hill to testify about why we need to have gun control, have better gun laws, and do background checks. And there's a very famous or infamous video, however you want to to look at it. One that she shot herself of her following him and harassing him as he's walking towards the Capitol, saying basically that this didn't happen, that this was a staged event, that it was another false flag event, that these were carried out by actors, and that you're just doing this because you want to take guns away from us. And yet, this was the same person who yelled out "liar" at the State of the Union address this past Wednesday. Consider the source. Consider the source, folks. That's all I say is consider the source. But I like what President Biden did, because President Biden baited the Republicans into publicly stating that they would not cut Medicare. How did he do it, you ask? Well, when they started the booing and the hissing and the acting like they're at a WWE event or a taping of the Jerry Springer show, he said, okay, so you guys are not going to cut Social Security, right? And they stood up in unison and clapped and cheered, meaning that, yes, no, we're not going to cut it. He said, okay, it's right there on public display now. So they cannot deny it. They can't come back and say, well, we were quoted out of context, but what we really meant was that. They fell for the bait. And you know what the funny thing about it was, is that Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, looked like my grandmother used to do, rest in peace. My paternal grandmother used to do. I never forget one time, there's a local church here in Cleveland called Holy Trinity. And one time when I was younger, me and a couple of my cousins who were around the same age I am, we went to church with her one day at Holy Trinity. And she was up in the choir stand. We were sitting in the pews. And for some reason, we decided that we wanted to start cutting up. But you know what? All she had to do was look from that choir stand and give us the look, and we straightened up and fly right. And Kevin McCarthy, and then to show you the weakness of his position, when they started Shacking the Fool, now maybe that's something Shaq should put on his next Shacking the Fool segment. When they start Shacking the Fool, acting the fool, you can literally see him shushing them. But did they pay him any attention? No, not at all. And he had discussed with them prior to this that President Biden is going to try to bait you into this, and don't take the bait. But being the Trumpists that they are, because all they're doing is acting just like their leader who they follow, and that's Donald Trump himself, they literally could not help themselves. And Biden being savvy enough, which I guess that dispels some of the things that, he's losing brain function, and that, he's not thinking clearly. Guess that dispels some of that, huh? Deliberately baited them into this, and they fell for it hook, line, and sinker. And by the way, President Biden was telling the truth, and he has the documents to show it. Both Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, and more so Senator Rick Scott of Florida, who is over the Republican campaign during this past midterm election, publicly stated that they wanted to cut Social Security. They want to privatize Social Security, which would drive up the cost of it and take away some of the guarantees and benefits of it. They want to get rid of it as a government program. They call it an entitlement program. And as I said on the show a few weeks ago, and for those of you that were listening and for those who weren't, this is just a quick review of what we said. Folks, Social Security is not an entitlement program. I recently retired in July of last year. I worked for a travel agency, international corporate travel agency for 32 years, from June of 1990 until July of last year. Prior to that, I worked for United Airlines for 4 years. In addition to that, while I was working for United for those 4 years, and then some years prior to that, I taught school in the Cleveland public school system. I'm not trying to throw my resume out here. What I am doing is this. You know what all those places had in common that I worked? The Cleveland public school system, United Airlines, and BCD Travel. You know what they all had in common? Oh, and by the way, prior to working for the Cleveland public school system, when I was in Columbus at The Ohio State University, while I was a student there, and even after I graduated there, that fed into it as well. All of these places, even though they're diverse industries, one was a food service industry, one was an education, the other two were travel related. But what they all had in common was that I paid taxes out of my paycheck. As a matter of fact, I didn't have to pay them. They were taken out of my check. And what all of my previous employment places had in common was this, is that all of them took out what was known as FICA tax, and that tax money is paid into Social Security. So that when I retired, I can then reap the benefits of what I have been paying for all of those years. So that is not an entitlement program. It is not a government handout. And this is what these politicians, especially these Republican politicians that are opposed to Social Security, that the government paying for Social Security, that want the government to get rid of it and privatize it, this is what they label it as an entitlement program. It is not an entitlement program in the sense that they're portraying it. Yes, I'm entitled to it. You know why? Because that's my money. I invested in that for all of the years that I worked. I invested in that, so therefore I should be able to reap the benefits of all of those years. That by God's grace and God's grace alone, that He gave me the health, that He gave me the modicum of intelligence that I have, that He gave me the ability to do. All I'm doing is just taking out my investment. That is my investment. It's not an entitlement program. It's something that I worked for. So I look at President Biden's address. As I said, he laid out his plans for basically the rest of his presidency. And although he did not declare it on last Wednesday when he gave the State of the Union address, he sounded very much like a person who's going to run for a second term, which we will talk about later in the show today. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087, 216-939-5087. Like to hear your thoughts on what we just talked about. Just don't sit and listen. If you have some thoughts, call in. I'd love to hear what you have to say about what we just talked about. Topic number 2. Ron DeSantis likes to tout himself as this, quote, freedom fighter, unquote, that I'm leading the charge against the woke mob that wants to teach your children and subvert your children's mind and fill them with all this propaganda, this left-wing propaganda. I am coming out so strongly and stringently against the woke mob to defend our youth against and defend the crumbling of our society, of this woke mob that wants to tear down all of our traditional values and all the things that we hold close to our hearts and the things that have been uniquely American since this country has been founded. Hold up. Wait a minute. Because the last time I checked, freedom of speech and freedom of the press were integral to what this country was built on and what this country was founded on, even though it was not living up to it at the time that it was written. That those are the basic foundation, the basic building blocks of this nation. And yet, what we have seen in the state of Florida is a move, basically, that me being the historian that I am, looks a lot to me like fascist Italy or Nazi Germany. What are you talking about, Jeff? Well, in fascist Italy and in Nazi Germany, and for that matter, totalitarian governments that exist today, like Russia, run by the butcher of Crimea, run by the butcher of Ukraine, Vladimir, the war criminal, the gangsterish, thuggish war criminal Putin, Kim Jong-un, President Xi in China, the Republican guards that are running Iran, the Assads that are running Syria, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to sit here and name all of them. You get my point. Banning books that you may have a difference of opinion about is what happens in these fascist, repressive, totalitarian governments. And folks, I must confess, true confessions here. I never thought that I would live to see the day here in the good old USA where books would be banned. But we're here now today. And I just want to share this story with you in case you didn't hear about it this week. In Duval County, Florida. Now, Duval County is the county where Jacksonville is. And Duval County is the largest county in the state of Florida and one of the largest counties along with Harris County in Texas, where Houston is, one of the largest counties in the United States of America. All right? The Duval County Board of Education banned the following books. And these are for books that are for elementary age children. Okay, so they're fairly simply written. They have a lot of pictures in them. They're marketed towards elementary age children, primarily third graders. Okay? So these are these dangerous, subversive, woke books that have been banned by Duval County. There was a book about Roberto Clemente. Now, for those of you who do not know or don't follow baseball, Roberto Clemente is a Hall of Famer, played his career with the Pittsburgh Pirates, is a hero in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rican born Hall of Fame baseball player who died tragically on New Year's Eve in 1972 on a plane because he was taking aid to Nicaragua that had been devastated by storms. All right? This plane was taking off and it crashed into the Atlantic Ocean and he died. Roberto Clemente is a hero in Puerto Rico. As a matter of fact, there's an award that is awarded each year in Major League Baseball called the Roberto Clemente Award for the person who has, that they deem has been the greatest humanitarian as a ball player that year. It's very similar to the Walter Payton Award that the NFL grants. All right? Well, Duval County, Florida. Oh, by the way, there's quite a few Hispanic Puerto Rican people that live in Duval County. Okay? Duval County banned the children's book about Roberto Clemente. You know why they did it? They did it because there is a section in there that talks about the racism that he encountered in the 50s as a ball player of color and also a Latin ball player while he was playing in the SALI, the South Atlantic League in the minor leagues during the 50s before he got called up to the major leagues with the Pirates. Okay? They banned that book, folks. They try to clean it up. They said, well, we haven't permanently banned it. It's banned under review. What in the heck are you reviewing? The fact is that Roberto Clemente faced racism as a black Puerto Rican ball player during the 50s, playing in the Sally Leagues, in the minor leagues, before he got called up to the major leagues with the Pirates. But for some reason, the Duval County Board of Education does not want school-aged children, many of whom are Puerto Rican, or of a Latin Hispanic background. They don't want them reading this book about Roberto Clemente, who, by the way, is a hero, and rightfully so, to many Puerto Rican people. Because it talks about the racism that he felt, and they don't want to guilt the white children. Well, first of all, you don't give children enough credit anyway. Children are smart enough and savvy enough to figure out things for themselves. What you really don't want is you do not want your children educated to the truth of what happened in this country during that time. That's what the real deal is. Not only that, they also banned the book on Jackie Robinson because it details the racism that he faced. They also banned the book. Now, this book is above the level of the school-age children, but this is more to a higher level reading. They banned the famous Richard Wright book. Richard Wright, black novelist of the 20th century, during the Harlem Renaissance and beyond. They banned his critically acclaimed and famous, world-famous book, Native Son. Native Son has been banned. And their reasoning that they gave to ban Native Son is that Native Son, quote, talked about sex and had a story, and there's a part in there where there's some sexual abuse that's chronicled in the book. We'll get to that in a minute. So Native Son is on the ban list. A book about the Holocaust is on the ban list. Ruby Bridges' story is on the banned list. Ruby Bridges, for those of you who don't know, Ruby Bridges in 1960 was a 6-year-old little girl who desegregated the schools in New Orleans, and she had to get a National Guard escort back and forth to school. All the white parents pulled their children out of the school and sent them to private school, so she was going to school by herself, had one teacher assigned to her. And so the Ruby Bridges story was written, by the way, Miss Bridges is still alive. She's an activist today. The Ruby Bridges story was banned as well. Now, these books, let me go back to Native Son for a moment. Told you why it was banned. The alleged reason why it was banned. You know what wasn't banned? And not that I'm calling for it to be banned, but I just want to do a compare and contrast here. Shakespeare wasn't banned. Shakespeare, none of his plays were banned. His plays contain suicide, adultery, murder, assassination, witchcraft, demonism. All of that are in Shakespearean plays. And I'm not calling for them to ban, because this is classic literature and that students, especially on the high school level, need to read and experience. So I'm not calling that for the ban of Shakespearean literature. But I'm just pointing that out to compare and contrast what is going on here. So on the one hand, you're going to ban Native Son because it has references to sex and sexual abuse in it. You're going to ban that book. But you're not going to ban the study or the reading or the listening to of Shakespearean works like Othello, like Romeo and Juliet, like Hamlet, who have the content of those things that I just named to you: adultery, suicide, violence, witchcraft. That's all in. I mean, I'm not telling you something you don't know unless you've never either seen a Shakespearean play performed, or when you were in high school or college, read the literature as part of your English literature class. And again, I'm not calling for the banning of it. No, not to the contrary. I believe that the Shakespearean literature should be taught. But if you're going to ban one piece of literature based on the fact that it contains some material that you think that's offensive, and yet you're not going to ban the other material that contains similar, if not the same type of material, then in the words of Bugs Bunny, what's up, Doc? What's going on here? Is your interest really to protect your children from being exposed to sexual images or sexual language or racial images, or racial language and things that what makes you uncomfortable? Or was it really that you just don't want them to learn anything about blacks, about Puerto Ricans, people of color, or Jews? Because that's the way it looks. Because everything that's bad is either about Jewish folks, Latino folks, or black folks. All on the moral cause of we are not going to allow critical race theory to be taught in our schools because it's racism. Did you see Governor Huckabee Sanders on the other night with her rebuttal to President Biden's speech? Her first words that came out of her mouth were the far left woke mob. That's why one of the first things that I did as elected as the first female governor of the state of Arkansas is that I signed into law that no critical race theory will ever be taught in our school system. Hello, Sarah. No critical race theory was being taught in your school system. Stop trying to front. Stop trying to perpetrate. You knew that. Folks, don't fall for this okie doke. Don't fall for this bovine feces. Bovine is the bull family, and you know what feces is. Don't fall for it. This is pure, unadulterated, out and out racism. And listen, it's not even subtle. How you going to sit there and tell me that you don't want your third grade child in the largest county in the state of Florida, where there is a significant portion of your population that is Puerto Rican, Latino, Cuban origin, and you don't want them to read a book about Roberto Clemente, a hero to Puerto Ricans? You talk to Puerto Rican ball players. Last year, I remember, on Roberto Clemente Day, because they set aside a day last year during the season, during the MLB season, was Roberto Clemente Day, where everybody wore the number 21, which is the number Roberto Clemente wore, and when he was during his MLB career. And to a man, every player, a Puerto Rican, Dominicano, Cuban, Latin descent, all talked about what a hero this man was to them. And you are going to ban a book from your children, third grade children, because, oh, well, we're not permanently banned. It's just banned right now under review. It should have never been banned, should have never been banned in the first place. Don't hand me that horse feces. I don't want to hear that. And you must think that we are stupid enough that the American public outside of MAGA world are stupid enough to believe that you think that you're not banning this for any other reason other than the fact that you want to continue to have a curriculum that promotes white supremacy. You don't want your children learning about the true history of this nation. You want to literally whitewash history. You literally want to wipe black history off the face of the map. Or you want to teach a sanitized, homogenized version of it, like what I received when I was coming up, when I was in school, which I detailed on the show. You know that, well, Crispus Attucks and George Washington Carver, which, again, I'm not denigrating these black men in history. But you never told me about Frederick Douglass. You know why? Because he said, without struggle, there is no progress. You never told me about Denmark Vesey or Nat Turner, who led slave revolts. No, what you taught me about was that, oh, how happy. We so happy, master. We so happy. Yes, sir, boss. All Weeze wants to do is just strum our get the banjo and dance around. And we's just so happy working all day out there in the cotton field, master. Yes, sir. Wants to sell my wife away from me, sir? I ain't got no problem with that, Captain Mr. Boss, man. Wants to sell my children away from me? Go ahead, boss. Because we's just so happy. Yeah, you never told me about Denmark Vesey. You never told me about Nat Turner. You never told me about Box Brown. You never told me about Richard Allen, who started the AME Church. Because in a house of worship, folks, and a house supposedly where God is, and I'm an evangelical Christian. I already told you what the real definition of it is, not what's being perpetrated on television. It hurts my heart that Richard Allen had to start the AME Church because white people would not allow him to worship in their church. Or that he had to sit in a special section of church. He couldn't sit where the other people did, let alone preach. So we don't learn about that. You teach me about the Battle of Little Bighorn, but you don't teach me about the Trail of Tears, where you forced the Cherokee Nation to march all the way across country from Georgia to Oklahoma because you wanted to take their land. No, I don't learn about that, but I do learn about how George Custer was slaughtered and his men were slaughtered at Little Bighorn. Yeah, I learned about that. You teach me about the Boston Massacre, as you rightfully so, because it was played a part in founding this country. But you know what you don't teach me about? You don't teach me about the Tulsa Massacre that destroyed Black Wall Street, that has generational effects to it, because had that not been destroyed, there was a gentleman whose name I can't recall right now who owned a string of hotels there in Tulsa. Who knows, his family could have had generational wealth like the Hiltons or the Hyatts. No, you don't teach me about that. But to take it to the extreme that you do not want third graders to have a book about Roberto Clemente or Jackie Robinson, because those books expose the racism that they encountered and they endured and shaped them. Shaped them. So you ban the books. You ban Ruby Bridges. You ban Native Son. You've already banned Beloved by Toni Morrison.
What?
In Florida. and other places, Texas too. Beloved is banned.
Wow.
Because you're concerned about the content. But like I said, Othello's not banned. Hamlet's not banned. Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, not banned. And I'm not saying they should be. I'm saying teach the whole gamut. So, state of Florida, and I won't even say to a lesser extent, the state of Texas, the two states that thus far have banned books. But guess what? If they did it there, it's coming to your neighborhood soon. So as we close this portion of our show before we go take our break, the state of Florida and the state of Texas, I say, seek Heil to you. Seek Heil was what the Nazis chanted when they were burning books back in the 30s in Nazi Germany. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087. We're going to take a short break here. We're going to listen to some music and have a few announcements, and we'll be back with you after that with the second part of our show. All I do. Has violence happened to you or your family? Violence can affect all parts of your life, sometimes in ways you can't see. Violence can affect the way you eat, sleep, it cause you to lose focus, feel angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape. But we're here to tell you that violence doesn't have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life. Today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, emotional support, and a whole lot more. So listen, don't let violence control you. You can break free, and TRC can help. If you're listening, and the number's on the screen, if you're watching, 216 644 5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They are free 24/7 and confidential. They offer real help for real needs in real time. So listen, if you want out and you don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence starting today. Call today, get the help you need today. If you know a friend that needs help, pass it on. 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children.
And as we always do about this time, you guys, our History 365 here on the right side with your host, Jeff Doggett. And listen, I could not believe my findings. I hope that, I really hope that, with my research moving forward, that I could tell you more about Ludwig van Beethoven in the future when I tell you guys that this totally blew up my world what I'm learning about him and his true heritage. I was absolutely blown away. I could not believe it. Jeff, I couldn't believe it. I'm a, yes, and what's bad about it is that they have pictures of him. They also have pictures, more black and white pictures that depict his true self outside of the ones that were obviously edited to make him look Caucasian. Amazing, but I'll be back to you guys with that later on. But for now, I just want to introduce to some and reintroduce to others. I'm trying to get him up here. Come on, man. Reintroduce to others George T. Sampson. Yeah, so in 1892, George T. Sampson developed and patented America's first automatic clothes dryer. Like many other entrepreneurs, Sampson did not invent the item that made his reputation. Dryers of sorts had been used for better half of the 19th century, but people complained that this made their clothes smell of smoke and stained them with soot. Sampson refined the process with a series of suspension rods over the specially designed stove. With this new development, those doing laundry could be happy with the medium of their drying their clothes quicker, no matter the weather, and without having to worry about setting garments on fire. This design was used until the growth in use of gas and electric dryers in the late 1930s and the 1940s. And look here, he's done like 12 other patents. Google, I tell you all the time, and it's not just our culture, it's everyone. Like like there are a lot of people that just don't read. They try and say that we don't. It's a lot of people that just don't read. We're not gonna confine it to just our culture. So look, you guys, go Google Google. It's as simple as I'm saying it. It's as simple as you can do, and go research your history. Your history is your now. And now back to the right side with your host, Jeff Doggett.
Thank you, Marie. And before we get into our delve into our second hour, I just want to give our thoughts and prayers to those people in Turkey and Syria who have lost their lives due to the terrible earthquake
Absolutely.
that took place there last week. Some 24,000 people have perished, and yet each day, at least in Turkey, we see miracles after miracles where people are being pulled from the rubble after being buried for days upon days. But we just want to give our thoughts and our prayers to those individuals that are in Turkey and Syria that are suffering right now due to the earthquake. So in our first hour, and our call-in number again is 216-939-5087. None of you all called last hour. I find that curious because I know you have some thoughts on what we talked about, but we move on. Apparently what we were talking about was, I guess that was a little too heavy for you all. Maybe you all just wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. But we're going to go into a lighter topics now, what I call the candy store of the world. And we're going to look at one of our sports topics today. We talk, as I said in the beginning, as we say each week, we talk sports, we talk politics, we talk the issues of the day every Saturday right here from 3 to 5 here on the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise, powered by Google and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines. So what I want to talk about now is Thursday, after a flurry of trades and transactions beginning on actually last Tuesday, I believe it was, when Kyrie Irving was traded from, what was it? No, I take that back. It was last Sunday. It was Sunday when Kyrie Irving was traded from the Brooklyn Nets to the Dallas Mavericks, and culminating on in the wee hours of the morning on Thursday when the other earth-moving blockbuster deal was made, where Kevin Durant was traded from those same Nets to the Phoenix Suns, there was a flurry of deals that took place. Mm-hmm. The NBA trade deadline is always one of the most exciting times of year in sports, and especially in the NBA. I think second only to the finals, the playoffs themselves, and maybe free agency. But I think that the trade deadline trumps even the free agency that we see, the activity that we see then. So I want to look at who I think are the winners and the losers here at the trade deadline. So first thing I want to look at, let's look at the winners. First are the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns and got, as I just said, they got Kevin Durant. Mm-hmm. They also they were able to trade to the Nets Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, who the Nets then shipped off to Milwaukee, and Mikal Bridges, and also 4 first-round draft picks. Why do I think Phoenix is a winner here? Well, now, if you look at the Phoenix Suns right now, at least on paper, when Kevin Durant comes back, and when Kevin Durant, before he went down with his sprain of his medial collateral ligament in his knee, the Nets were had won 18 out of their last 20 games. And it was widely talked about in NBA circles, that this was a team, a legitimate threat to come out of the Eastern Conference, a legitimate threat to the Celtics and also the Bucks. And now you put Kevin Durant on a team with legendary point guard, and true, he's past his prime, he's not what he used to be. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, you put him on a team with legendary first ballot Hall of Famer, and many of you may even know him more so for his State Farm commercials than his activity on the court, which is kind of sad. But anyway, Chris Paul. You also put him with DeAndre Ayton, and you also put him with superstar two-guard Devin Booker, who you can make the argument is close to, if not being on the same level that Kyrie Irving is on, who Kevin Durant played on in the last few years. And we'll get to the Nets in a few moments. So now, instead of a big three, you now have a big four, and now you have a super team. DeAndre Ayton, now all he has to worry about now is rebounding and scoring there in the paint. You got Durant that can take over the game. You got Devin Booker, who once scored 71 points in a game. And as I said, prior to his injury this year, and he just came back from his injury, was, and rightfully so, considered one of the best players in the NBA. So Phoenix immediately, at least from where I see it, has gone to the top in the Western Conference, even though in the standings they're not there yet. I believe they're 5th in the West right now. But when the playoffs begin, and assuming that they can stay healthy, and granted that's a big assumption given Durant's injury history, given Chris Paul's injury history, especially come playoff time, but assuming that they can stay healthy, it's going to make them very difficult to get past in the Western Conference of the NBA. Now all of a sudden, the Denver Nuggets, who are right now are the 1 seed in the West, and the Memphis Grizzlies, who are the 2 seed in the West, now all of a sudden they're looking up at the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix got better, as we said, they got better for the short term. To me right now, they're the favorites coming out of the West with that lineup that they have. And again, they had to give up a lot, giving up Cam Johnson, giving up Mikal Bridges, who never misses a game, who's an Iron Man. And, of course, they traded Jay Crowder, who wasn't playing anyway, due to, the fallout that he had with Coach Monty Williams and the team during the playoffs last year. They are immediately, Kevin Durant is arguably the best player in the league right now. If he's not, he's in the top 2, depending on who you like the best between him and Giannis. Those 2 are clearly the best 2 players in the league right now, at least the way I see it. So Phoenix definitely is a winner based on what they were able to do by adding Kevin Durant. And that trade came out of nowhere. No one was expecting this deal, and I'm going to get to that in just a few minutes when I look at the Brooklyn Nets, or what's left now of the Brooklyn Nets. But no one was expecting that deal at all. Now, last summer, if you remember, Kevin Durant came to the front office in Brooklyn and demanded a trade. And Phoenix was one of the places that he wanted to be traded to. It is rumored that was his number one landing spot. So why did the Nets trade him? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. But right now, it looks as though Phoenix, at least on paper, is the team to beat, despite what they had to give up in future assets with the 4 number 1 picks, which were unprotected, and the players that they gave up to Brooklyn as well. Another winner at the trade deadline was, and by the way, congratulations to him for breaking the all-time scoring record of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But the other winner at the trade deadline, at least from how I see it, are the Los Angeles Lakers. Because what the Lakers needed on their team that they didn't have was 2 things. They needed roster flexibility, and they needed shooters. The way the Lakers roster was constructed, they were at best going to be a play-in team. Mm-hmm. And if they got through the play-in team, they weren't going to advance very far in the playoffs. And that's under the assumption that both LeBron and Anthony Davis would be healthy during the playoffs. And you know that's been a very tricky and precarious thing, especially for Anthony Davis throughout his career. Well, Charles Barkley has dubbed him street clothes because he called him that because he said that most of the time you see him, he's in street clothes instead of his uniform. Well, the Lakers at the trade deadline were part of a 3-team deal that sent Russell Westbrook to the Utah Jazz. The Minnesota Timberwolves were involved in it. Minnesota sent to the Lakers point guard D'Angelo Russell.
Welcome back.
And also forward Jared Vanderbilt. That they went to the Lakers. Utah sent to the Lakers shooter and forward Malik Beasley. If you remember last week when we talked about trades, there was some rumors that he was coming to Cleveland, as if Cleveland needed a 3-and-D type players, which Malik Beasley is. So the Lakers picked up D'Angelo Russell, who is a shooter, 39% from three-point land, 45% from the field. Picked up Malik Beasley, another shooter, shooting 40% from three-point land, averaging about 14, 15 points a game. Same with D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell is also a point guard, can run the point, that way can take LeBron off of the ball at times so that he doesn't have to run the whole offense all the time. And they picked up a someone who flies under the radar a lot, but a very, very exceptional wing defender in Jared Vanderbilt. And it was addition by subtraction. What do you mean addition by subtraction? Well, they were able to get rid of the contract of Russell Westbrook and trade him. And things had gotten sour there in L.A. with Westbrook. As a matter of fact, the night that LeBron broke the record, with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the house and Denzel Washington and all the stars of Hollywood, it reminded me of the Showtime Lakers of back in the day. That night of that game, a lot of people were wondering and speculating that when LeBron broke the record, why was it that AD, Anthony Davis, was sitting on the bench very expressionless and was not celebrating with the rest of the teammates? Well, what we didn't know until we found out later is that at halftime of that same game, that Coach Darvin Ham and former Laker Russell Westbrook had got into an altercation. And that during the season that Westbrook was feuding with teammates. Now, no one ever spoke ill of Russ. They always spoke well of him, but because of his attitude and disposition, that was brought to the team. And mind you, we didn't see this on the floor. When he took on the role of the sixth man, he was commended throughout NBA circles that he subjugated his ego to the point where he could come off the bench as a sixth man. So no one saw any of this. And what we did see, though, was how Russell Westbrook's game was not a good fit with the Lakers. Of course, I could have told them that before they made the trade. But again, as great as a player LeBron is and always has been, GM LeBron is not a good general manager, because GM LeBron was the one who wanted Russell Westbrook there and also wanted Anthony Davis, too, for that matter. And if you look at all the players that the Lakers traded to get those two guys, you can make an argument that they may have been a better team if they were able to keep Brandon Ingram, who they traded to New Orleans in the Anthony Davis trade. If they could have kept Kyle Kuzma, who they traded to Washington in the Russell Westbrook deal. If they were able to keep Julius Randle, who was part of the Anthony Davis deal to New Orleans, and then wound up with the Knicks.
Heck, you should have kept Rondo.
Possibly, yes, even though he's out the league now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I digress. So now the Lakers have shooting around LeBron and AD, which now spreads the floor, which opens up the lanes for them, because now you certainly cannot leave Malik Beasley open. You certainly cannot leave D'Angelo Russell open, not to mention the fact that D'Angelo Russell can create for himself and others, that Malik Beasley can also handle the ball and go to the basket. Is more than just a catch and shoot three-point shooter. He's a scorer. So and then as I said, you pick up Jared Vanderbilt, a wing defender. So this has made the Lakers better. And I do look for them to move up in the standings and possibly get out of the play-in. But so if that does happen, and they do get out of the play-in, because right now the Lakers are 13th. But they're only like 4 or 5 games out of 8, which is still play-in. But do you really, let's say the Lakers do wind up in the play-in, that they don't move all the way up from 13th to 6th, and which I doubt is going to happen before the season ends. But it could. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But I doubt if they're going to jump 7 spots to keep themselves out of the play-in. But think about this. If you're one of those top 2 teams, if you're Memphis, who right now currently sits as a 2 seed in the West, or if you're Denver, who currently sits right now at the 1 seed in the West, do you really want to see the Lakers in round 1? Because usually the top 2 seeds, you're playing a lesser opponent. You're either playing somebody who was 9th or 10th and won the play-in, or you're playing somebody that was 7th or 8th all along, and they maintained their status by beating a lower team beneath them. I'll give you an example. Last year in the East, the Brooklyn Nets were a play-in team with Kyrie and KD. And as I said, we're going to get to them in just a moment. Hold on, because I've got a lot to say about the Nets. And the Nets barely survived the first play-in game when they played the Cavaliers last year. So they got in as the 7th seed. They played Boston in the first round. Boston was the 1 seed in the East. Boston was the 2 seed in the East. Miami was the 1 seed. So they played Boston, and Boston swept them. And usually that's what happens when a 2 and a 7 or a 1 and an 8 play one another. I'm not saying it won't happen this year either in the West. But if you're Denver or Memphis, do you really want to see the Lakers in the first round after the Lakers have LeBron, AD, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, and the rest of the squad that they have there? So the Lakers won. Phoenix were winners. The Dallas Mavericks were also a winner. Now, it's hard for me to say that a team is a winner when they acquired Kyrie Irving. Why do you say that? Because it's the paradox of Kyrie Irving, if you will. Kyrie Irving is a great ball player. Make no mistake about it. He is one of the premier talents in this league. Arguably the greatest ball handler the league has ever seen, maybe in the history of the league. And that's not coming just from me. That's coming from no one other than Isaiah Thomas himself who said that. But here's the paradox of Kyrie Irving. Because you get the greatness of him on the floor when he plays. Key phrase, when he plays. But then you get everything else that comes along with Kyrie Irving. You get all of the baggage with Kyrie Irving. You get all the just the kind of weirdness that comes along with him. You get him going AWOL on his team like he did 2 years ago with the Nets. When after the events of January 6th, he was so traumatized that he just told the Nets that, hey, I'm just so traumatized, I can't play. And then when his birthday came up, and he took time off for his birthday as well. Think about this. Here's a player, one of the premier talents in the league, and he just decides, you know what, hey, it's my birthday, I'm taking some time off. Yeah, I know my teammates need me, but hey, it's my birthday. So I'm going to take this time off. So that's the paradox. So it's hard for me to say Dallas is a winner, but they are. When you put Kyrie with Luka Doncic, that backcourt playing off one another, freeing up their shooters like Tim Hardaway. Now, defensively is where Dallas is going to be in trouble because neither Kyrie Irving or Luka Doncic play defense. They would need to be spotted, the D, the E, and the F in that word, and I still wonder if they would be able to spell the word. So, and they did give up a premier wing defender in Dorian Finney-Smith to the Nets in the Kyrie deal. Not to mention that Spencer Dinwiddie, who they gave up in the Kyrie deal, also is a good defender on the wings. So it's curious to see how that is going to work out, how that mix is going to work. Will it be similar to when Kyrie was in Cleveland and he and LeBron played off of one another? Because because the argument is made, well, how can two ball-dominant players like that get along? Well, it worked here in Cleveland with him and LeBron. It worked to a certain extent in Brooklyn with him and KD, especially during that period of time, as I said, this season when the Nets were on an 18-2 run this season. It looked like the team to beat, not only in the East, but perhaps for the whole shebang. So can it work between Kyrie and Luka? It can. However, here's the thing. Kyrie, now the rest of this season, Kyrie is going to keep his nose clean. Because Kyrie, at the end of this season, is a free agent and he wants a max deal. And I think from a monetary standpoint, he is going to get the max deal. But I don't think that he's going to get the years he wants. Kyrie wants a 4-year max. So if you're a team, if you're going to commit a 4-year, $50 million a year contract, so you're talking about $200 million, 4-year, $200 million contract to Kyrie Irving. Are you really willing to risk that, given his track record? Because that is a huge risk for several reasons. Some I've already detailed. You just never know what you're going to get with Kyrie. You never know when is the next time he's going to feel like going AWOL again. You never know what will be the next time when he's going to say something again that's now other players and coach and management are standing out giving explanations about what he was talking about, which is a distraction. If you're going to commit 4 years at approximately $200 million to Kyrie Irving, you have to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? Now, Mark Cuban, well, all of these owners are rich, so I'm not just going to single him out. He's got the money. But does Mark Cuban really want to take the risk? And if not, and if they're just renting Kyrie Irving, which I don't think they made that deal just to rent him. I really think that Dallas is going to make a very concerted effort to sign him, and that they also retain his bird rights as well. So I think they're going to make a very concerted effort to sign Kyrie. But are they going to give him 4 years? And if you were Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks, would you give Kyrie Irving 4 years? I'd have to think long and hard about that. And it just shows you, once again, the paradox of Kyrie Irving. Because of a player of that talent level, of that ability level, of the skill set that he brings you when he's on the court and he's fully engaged, Maybe wondering why I'm repeating that, because he's not always fully engaged. Looked like last year in the Boston series, looked like he kind of checked out. But a guy that has a skill set that he brings, when fully engaged, is one of the top 10 players in the league. Here's the issue, though. Kyrie Irving, the way I see it, cannot be the best player on your team if you expect to win a championship. He will always be Robin. What Kyrie Irving should have done, well, what he really should have done, he should have stayed in Cleveland. I believe if he stayed in Cleveland, LeBron would have stayed and they would have won more championships, as you saw how the years after Kyrie left, Cleveland played out. You don't think Cleveland would have beat Golden State that year that Toronto did? I do. You don't think? I'll cast the bubble year aside because that was such an unusual, awkward year. You don't know what could occur then. But I remember the team with LeBron James on it won the title that year in the bubble. You don't think that Cleveland would have come out of the East 2 years ago with Kyrie and LeBron and played Phoenix in those finals? You don't think they could have won that? But even if he didn't stay in Cleveland, if he should have stayed in Boston. Look at the Celtics right now. The Celtics have the best record in the NBA. They are favored by many to win it all this year after their disappointing defeat to the Warriors last year. Can you imagine a fully engaged Kyrie Irving on that team? To me, it would be a wrap. But the danger in signing Kyrie Irving to a long-term deal, a 4-year deal, is that once he signs that contract, then he can go back to being Kyrie again. Which means he may go AWOL again. Which means he may say something again that causes him to be suspended, or he may not be fully engaged for whatever reason. So, well, Jeff, if he doesn't sign with Dallas, where does he go? Well, if you're the Lakers, that would seem like a logical spot. However, I don't see the Lakers signing him a 4-year contract either, because LeBron is signed for only 2 more years, and they certainly don't want Kyrie past the time LeBron is there. Because what's going to happen in 2 years, even though it's questionable as to whether Bronny is NBA talent or not, is that LeBron's son, LeBron James Jr., a.k.a. Bronny, is in all likelihood going to declare for the NBA draft, and LeBron has already said that he wants to play with his son, and the Lakers will not, in all likelihood, be in any kind of position to draft him. So what LeBron's going to do is allow that 2 years on his contract to play out, and then if Bronny is not available to be with the Lakers, then whatever team that Bronny is drafted by, that's where LeBron's going to go to. So there's a lot of curious and very interesting things that could happen with one Mr. Kyrie Irving over the next few years. Now, for the short term, I really think, and as you've seen the last two games that he played, first game the other night against the Clippers and last night in Sacktown against the Kings, you got a fully engaged Kyrie Irving, and Dallas won both games easily and handily. And this was out without Luka. Lucas was supposed to return tonight when they play Sacramento again, a back-to-back in Sacramento. So for the short term, you're going to get a fully engaged Kyrie because he's playing for a contract right now. And despite what some of you think out there, even with a fully engaged Kyrie and all of the greatness that Luka brings, I don't think Dallas is coming out the West. But Dallas went to the Western Conference Finals last year, right? Phoenix, Dallas. Just say it's a Phoenix, Dallas Conference Finals. Who you picking there? I'm going with Phoenix. Phoenix has the more talented team and they have the more balanced team. So those are the winners. Now other teams made minor moves. I said the Bucks picked up Jay Crowder, who they coveted. The Knicks got Josh Hart from the Trailblazers. As a Cavs fan, I was a little salty about that because I was kind of hoping the Cavs could get him. I guess the happiest guy in the world must be John Collins, who didn't get traded again this year. Every year at the trade deadline, his name comes up in trade rumors, but he never gets traded. Instead, Atlanta got Saddiq Bey from Detroit, which can help. That was another three-team deal between Detroit, Golden State, and Atlanta, where Orlando sent Mo Bamba to the Warriors. Detroit got Wiseman from Golden State. Saddiq Bey went to Atlanta. Who are the losers? Well, to me, the biggest loser are the Brooklyn Nets. Now, if you think about this, just 3 years ago, folks, they put together what they thought was a super team when both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant came to Brooklyn as, well, Kevin Durant was a free agent. Kyrie, they obtained in a trade. Kyrie lured Kevin Durant to come there. Durant couldn't play the first year because he was still recovering from his injury. And then the following season, which was 2 years ago, they were able to coax James Harden out of Houston in a three-team deal, which benefited my team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, because Brooklyn sent Jared Allen to Cleveland. Then Victor Oladipo went to Houston, and James Harden came to the Nets. So now you have this super team, this big three: Kyrie, James Harden, Kevin Durant. That deal was made. The Nets were touted as the favorites to come out of the East in the 2021 season. And to be fair, they were very close to doing exactly that. They won their first round series that year against Boston. The second round, they were playing Milwaukee. They went to a 7-game series. Brooklyn had home court advantage. And at the very end of regulation, Kevin Durant made a shot that, had his toe been behind the line, would have been a 3-point shot instead of a 2-point shot. And all likelihood, it was like 1 point something seconds left in the game. So it was all likelihood would have sent Brooklyn to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they would have played Atlanta. And, well, we don't know for a fact, but the odds are they would have dispatched Atlanta and would have gone to the finals and played Phoenix in the finals that year. And they would have been the heavy favorite to win and would have brought it through. Just look at that, folks. Look how close it was to things being a whole lot different there in Brooklyn. The size of Kevin Durant's toe. That Milwaukee series, Kyrie Irving went down in that series with an injury. James Harden was hampered as well, though he did play. But by the time the Eastern Conference and the NBA Finals would have come around, assuming that Brooklyn would have advanced, the health status of Irving and Harden would have been a lot different than it was in that Milwaukee series, and you would have had that big three. That's how close it came. But it blew up in their face. And it blew up in their face primarily because of the personalities of those involved. You know who came out smelling like roses on this whole thing now, folks, in my opinion? You know who really looks good about it now? That I never thought that I would say this? Is James Harden. James Harden got out of there and is in a much better situation now in Philadelphia than he ever was in Brooklyn. And in exchange for that, they got Ben Simmons. That's right, the quagmire, the anomaly, if you will, that is Ben Simmons. But this whole thing blew up because it was volatile in the first place. Remember when they got together, the first thing that they did is Kenny Atkinson, who was a very good coach for the Nets, but no, Kyrie and KD didn't want him as the coach, so he got fired. As a matter of fact, Kyrie Irving made a statement that, well, we don't really need a coach. And bringing into that volatile type of mix, they brought in a coach who had no coaching experience at all, wasn't an assistant coach, had no head coach experience at all, and that coach was Hall of Famer Steve Nash. And you saw what happened. So last summer, Kevin Durant goes to the Nets, as we said earlier, and demands a trade. Mind you, this is after he had signed a 4-year contract extension at the beginning of last season. So during the summer of 2022, this past summer, he goes to the Nets and demands a trade, and the Nets don't acquiesce, which they shouldn't have. Comes back, and then he makes a statement he wants GM Sean Marks and coach Steve Nash fired before he would come back. Well, he came back. They did fire Steve Nash into the season. The season began with Steve Nash. He got fired, was replaced by Jacques Vaughn, and Sean Marks is still the GM. Now, mind you, it was all quiet about 9 days ago. The whole talk surrounding the Nets was when KD comes back, are they going to be able to pick up where they left off before the injury? And there was a talk that the Nets were one of the teams to beat in the East. Maybe they were a little thin in the middle, but their defense had improved exponentially under Jacques Vaughn. Kevin Durant was one of the leading shot blockers in the league. Claxton was a rim protector. Had Royce O'Neal, another good wing defender. And they had shooters around Kyrie and KD. They had Seth Curry. They had Patty Mills. They had Joe Harris. So it looked like they had, while maybe not the perfect team, they had a very strong team and a very legitimate chance to come out of the Eastern Conference. It was just 9 days ago, folks. Nobody expected what occurred in the next 9 days. All of a sudden, last Friday, Kyrie Irving makes it public that he wants to be traded. We talked about that some on the show last week. He's mad. He was upset because the Nets did not give him a contract extension at first. And then when they did, the max deal they gave was going to be 4 years, but one of the stipulations is that the Nets were going to have to win a championship while he was under that contract. And Kyrie balked to that, and, to his credit, rightfully so. You can't put that clause in the contract, but you don't think that could have been negotiated? So that happens. He demands the trade. KD is very eerily silent. And mind you, this time next week, nobody was expecting the Nets to trade Kevin Durant. As a matter of fact, the pieces that they got back from Dallas in Dorian Finney-Smith and in former Net Spencer Dinwiddie were to surround Kevin Durant with wing options that made, while they were nowhere near what Kyrie Irving was, would still be the shooters that are around him that would need him, that would spread the floor, would clear things out for him. And they still did not have to give up Royce O'Neal. They still didn't have to give up Nick Claxton. And they were getting a premier defender in Dorian Finney-Smith back. Then the bombshell drops. I wake up Thursday morning, and I'm watching Game Time on NBA TV because, I want to see the highlights from the night before. And I see at the bottom of the screen, Nets trade K. Durant to the Suns for Mikal Bridges, for Cam Johnson, for Jay Crowder, and 4 picks.
Jay Crowder, wow.
Like, what? Bombshell, that came out of nowhere. Because in retrospect, had the Nets know that they were going to have to blow it up, then it would have made sense for them to make the trade Kyrie to the Lakers and get picks back and Russell Westbrook back, that expiring contract, so that they can rebuild with the picks that they were going to get, not the players they got back. That's not a rebuilding team that they have. They still have a playoff team, but it's not a championship team. Even with Durant, you could have made the argument that even with the trade of Kyrie, that the Nets still were somewhat favored as a championship team. Not now. They are a good team. They're going to be a playoff team if they keep that team together. But they have too many of the same kind of player now. And the reason that this whole experiment blew up, in my opinion, is based on the personalities of who you built it around, primarily Kyrie and KD. You've heard me say it before, it's well chronicled on this show. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are two of the most miserable superstars that I've ever seen in any sport. They are never happy. Kevin Durant was on a dynasty with the Warriors. But because it was because it was Steph Curry's team and not his team, even though he was the MVP of the 2 finals that they won when he was there. But his ego could not take the fact that this was considered Steph Curry's team. You were winning championships, KD. Who cares about that? Obviously you do. He was never happy. Kyrie Irving, another miserable superstar. You were playing with LeBron freaking James. You know, who just broke the scoring record of all time. And yet you weren't happy. So, the Brooklyn Nets were the losers in this. Because this grand experiment that they tried to pull blew up in their face. 216-939-5087 for your thoughts. Real quick, Super Bowl. Super Bowl 57 tomorrow, Scottsdale, Arizona, Kansas City, Philadelphia. Philadelphia is favored by 1.5. The over-under on this is 50.5. So who do I like in this game? Well, when you look at the two teams, Philadelphia has the better defensive line and the better offensive line. So normally, that translates into that team winning. because welcome to the right side, caller. State your name and where you're calling from.
Oh, it's Wax from on the east side. What's happening on the east side?
Hey, Wax, how you doing?
I'm okay, man. I'm sitting up here listening, and there was a lot of action before the trade deadline. I haven't seen this many big name superstars move. God, I mean, it had to be like since the '80s, late mid '80s, but I just want to say I think the Nets are a better team now with the influx of young talent and coachable players, because you could tell Jack Brown was tired of Kyrie Irving probably 2 days after he took over for Steve Nash. And the Gary Payton the second trade was weird.
Yeah, that might be rescinded.
Yeah.
That might be rescinded because the Warriors are concerned about him passing the physical. I'm sorry, go ahead, Wax.
You know, he had abdominal surgery in the summer.
Right.
What they said, he was taking painkiller shots just to play, which, he's going to have another surgery. And like they said, he might not even play until next year. So, I mean, Golden State's biggest deal was they just wanted James Wiseman out of there.
Right, and maybe he'll get a better chance in Detroit. So we'll see how that works. If Detroit's a young team, he's a young player, they can all develop together.
Well, the Cavs didn't make a move, but they moved up in the standings in the East. I think they're like second now.
Well, they're fourth. They're fourth. There's Boston's 1, Milwaukee's 2, Philadelphia's 3, and the Cavs are 4th right now.
Oh, okay. I thought the Cavs jumped Philly.
No, they're behind. They're still behind Philly right now. I think they're either 2 games or a game and a half behind Philadelphia last time I checked. But right now, so if the playoffs started today, the Cavs would be playing Brooklyn in the first round, but I don't think Brooklyn's going to stay in the 5 spot. They may, though, because Miami is 6. They might.
They might. I mean, like I said, they got Mikal Bridges can play. Cam Johnson can, he doesn't give them that outside shooting that they don't have now that Kevin Durant is there. Like you said, they still got Russell Neal. They got a center in the middle. I mean, they got a young team, and Dallas got damaged goods, and I won't say Phoenix got damaged goods, but Durant, he got a lot of injury problems here lately. And my question is to you is, do you think Dallas is going to give Kyrie Irving a max contract? Do you think anybody is going to give Kyrie Irving a max contract?
I think Dallas will offer one. The thing that I think about it, Wax, is not so much the money, is the years. That's what I think is going to be the sticking point here, is that, answer your question, yes, I think they're going to offer him a max deal, but will he take it? Because I can very well see Dallas offer him a 2-year max at $100 million, which would be $50 a year. But he's going to want a 4-year deal, and so that's what we were talking about earlier. Do you really think that they're going to commit to him for 4 years? And if they don't, will anybody else? Because then, as we said just a few minutes ago, the other logical landing spot for him would be the Lakers, but they're not going to go, I don't think, anyway, more than 2 years, because LeBron is only committed for 2 more years, and I don't see that being extended.
They'd have to go over the luxury tax to bring him in, or they'd have to get rid of the other half of their team.
Yeah, well, if they would go over the luxury tax, I think the Lakers would do that.
Well, it still wouldn't put him in a place with Denver. I still say Golden State, Memphis, Phoenix. I just wouldn't put. I mean, the Lakers, they can get freaking. They can go back and get Kareem, and they not gonna win. So, but do you think when you talk about Westbrook out there saying that he's going to the Clippers, which would be a pretty good thing for the Clippers, and for Westbrook too.
Yeah, it could be. It just depends on what is Russ's attitude going, because that's what got him out of LA. They traded him because what his attitude was there in LA, and that the final straw was the altercation that he had with Darvin Ham in the locker room at halftime of the game the other night where LeBron broke Kareem's record. So I've heard, like you've heard, the Clippers. I also heard Miami for Russ as well. So, and then there's been some talk that he might stay in Utah.
Well, I mean, Utah got a good team, good young team. He'd help them. But I think he wants to be back home in LA. And I think the Clippers would be a nice landing spot for Russ. And the whole thing with the Lakers is, LeBron nixed one trade to bring Russ there. And then, they just, it didn't work because they're not compatible on the court.
No.
Which, and that being the case, that's what's going to happen in Dallas. When Luka come back, he's a ball hog. And Kyrie Irving is a ball hog.
Well,
everybody else gets that around and I think two dudes go one-on-one.
The only thing about that, Wes, I hear what you're saying. The only thing about that is that I pushed back a little on that is, yes, they were both ball hogs, but think about it. When he was here in Cleveland, LeBron was ball dominant. He passed the ball, but he was ball dominant, and that worked out here. And in Brooklyn, Kevin Durant was ball dominant, and so was Kyrie. And when they did play, especially during that stretch earlier this year, it worked out. Now, it didn't pay off come playoff time because they assembled all that talent and they won one playoff series the whole time he was there. So I think him and Luka can coexist. The thing that I think is the weakness there is, especially since they got rid of Dorian Finney-Smith, they don't have any defenders. So, yeah, Kyrie and Luka will go off, but then who's going to play defense?
Nobody.
Exactly. So.
But did you hear Kevin Durant? And I kind of agree with Durant. And he came out and basically the only thing he said, besides thank you for getting me out of Brooklyn, was that he was very disappointed that they traded James Harden.
Oh, Durant said that. Wow. I didn't hear that. He must have said that today. I didn't know he said that.
Yeah, he came out and he said he was very disappointed that they traded James Harden because he felt him, Kyrie, and James Harden, they could have really did something, real special. Which, because remember when James Harden, he led the league in assists in Houston and in Brooklyn.
Well, it's curious.
James Harden was willing to sacrifice his game to make other people better.
That's a curious statement by KD because the rumor mill had it is that James Harden was gone because him and Kyrie fell out, and so the Nets made the decision to ship him off, especially when they thought that they were getting a premier defender and a 4-time All-NBA player in Ben Simmons, and that is yet to work out. And now he really looks lost now that Irving and Durant are gone.
Well, I think Ben Simmons is going to be like way down at the end of the week. John Brown came out a couple of weeks ago and said, I can't put him in the game.
Right. Not as you see at 440.
That's terrible. And Mikal Bridges is better. I think he's a better defender for what I know he's a better defender than Ben Simmons, and he's a better offensive player. Cam Johnson is a better defender. And Cam Johnson can actually shoot 95% from the free throw line. Ben Simmons is a bum. Basically, and if he's in Philadelphia next year, I mean, he'll probably be one of the ushers in the stand. That's my view. Hey, thanks. You always doing good on the show, man. I'm sorry I got in a little late, but keep on doing what you're doing, bro, and go Cavs.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Next week.
Yes, they do. I'm looking forward to it. But, thank you for listening, Wax. Thanks for your call.
All righty, see you then.
Yes, sir. So, as I was saying before the call, Philly has the better defensive line and offensive line. Running game is better with Philadelphia. So, all the signs point to Philadelphia. But the thing that Kansas City has is they got the magic man known as Patrick Mahomes, and they have the experience. So how do I see this game? What is my pick? I'm picking Kansas City tomorrow, 27-23. So I'm telling you then to take the under in this game. I'll watch it be a 35-30 shootout. But the reason that I'm going with Kansas City, and I agree that Philadelphia does have a better O-line and a better defensive line.
They're healthier
which
too.
Usually translates to victory because you win the game in the trenches. That's the old cliche, but it's true. But experience plays a big deal in this game, especially in the very beginning. I was listening to Phil Simms yesterday on Mad Dog Radio, and he was talking about how his first Super Bowl with the Giants, how in the huddle, that literally he said the players' chests were heaving, they almost hyperventilating and what have you, because of the nervousness and the excitement of being in that game for the very first time. Now, fortunately for them, they were playing Denver then, and that was their first time. Kansas City, this is their third appearance in the Super Bowl game. I think they have the experience, they have the better coach of the two, and while I like Jalen Hurts a lot, Jalen Hurts is not Patrick Mahomes, so I'm going with Kansas City 27-23 to win the Super Bowl. That'll give, and Patrick Mahomes will be the MVP of the Super Bowl, which will give him 2 Super Bowl rings and 2 Super Bowl MVPs in the last 5 years, and put him on a career track to perhaps maybe one day catch Tom Brady. We will see. Our hero and our zero of the week as we close. Our hero of the week are actually heroes of the week, and that these are the rescue workers in Turkey and Syria who've been literally working around the clock since the earthquake that happened on last week to try to pull out survivors. And there's been some miraculous rescues that have taken place there, especially in Turkey, where people have been buried for 3 or 4 days and have been pulled out of the rubble. So the rescue workers there in Turkey and Syria, you are heroes of the week on the right side. Our zero of the week is who we talked about in the first hour of the day, and that is the Duval County Board of Education in Duval, Florida, who are practicing fascist and authoritarian tactics by banning books. So there you got it. There you have it. Hero and zero of the week. And we thank you so much for listening this week. And thank you for calling. Thank you for those who watched on Facebook Live and on YouTube. But right now, I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time. And until next Saturday at 3 p.m., Shalom.
We'd like to thank you for tuning in to the right side with your host, Jeff Doggett, here on the station where we don't bring no static, but we sure enough bring the noise on staticradio.net. Make sure you guys check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on facebook.com/No Static Radio LLC, on Twitter at No Static _radio, on Instagram at @TheReal_No Static Radio, and on YouTube at No Static Radio. Also, if you guys would like to listen to replays of this show and others on NoStaticRadio.net, please make sure you check us out on Mixler, Mixcloud.com. Just type in No Static Radio on the toolbar for replays of this show and all others on the platform. And for continuous streaming, that means no refreshing. Just sit back, a little buffer on its own. Maybe a commercial if you're on TuneIn, and boom, you got us. Check us out on TuneIn.com, live on LiveRadio.net, or simply Media Q for continuous streaming of this show and all others on the platform. And for all things No Static Radio, including up and coming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts here, check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net. And one last thing that I forgot, at Liberty Hill Baptist Church, they have a Black History Month beat concert given by the Heritage Chorale on Sunday, February the 12th at 4 p.m. This is at Liberty Hill Baptist Church. The address is 8206 Euclid Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, where the Reverend there is Reverend Michael L. Brown. So you guys, if you're interested and if you want to participate in Black History Month activities, go check it out. Wonderful concert. The Heritage Chorale is a wonderful choir to listen to. A lot of them also come from the MLK choir that sang at Severance Hall, on Sunday prior to MLK Day. So make sure you go check it out. And yeah, you know what it is. Listen, it's the weekend, and guess what? Tomorrow's my day off. So you know what it is. We've got more music for your listening pleasure here on your Voice of the Revolution, NoStaticRadio.net, powered by Google, powered by Google. Partner with Colors is sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines, the Cleveland Rugby League, and Hot Girls Gear. You guys be safe. Enjoy this warm to cold weather. Make sure you stay bundled up at all times until, it goes away because, that's how you catch pneumonia or the flu. And we'll see you again on Monday with our regular lineup of shows and show hosts here to, get your week off and keep your week going, in great fashion. I'm your girl, Decisive, here, the correspondent for the Bright Side with Coach Jeff Dog. And guess what? I'm at peace. Be safe.